In this second part on our lectures on series of real numbers, we will talk about the integral test, explain its statement. We will not prove it here and look at some examples which illustrate this test, including the P series. Then we will talk about a few more related results, including the Abel-Prinsheim's theorem, and see how it affects the convergence of a series. So first of all, to understand this test, we need a little bit of knowledge which is beyond this course. So I will just mention the facts which are essential for us, and we will be proving this in our next course, that is Math Core 5. Okay, and a few results in Math Core 8 also, when we talk about Riemann integration. So anyways, suppose that you have any positive integer m, and suppose you take a function on the closed interval m to infinity, which is taking positive values. So its range is in open interval 0 to infinity. And suppose that it satisfies the property that whenever x is less than y, then fx is greater than equal to fy for all xy in the domain of the function, that is for all xy greater than equal to m. Then such a function is called a monotone decreasing function. Okay, we will do this in detail later on, but for the time being, let us know that this is the basic property. And how does one determine whether a function is monotone decreasing or not? One can either actually do the work completely algebraically, or when the function is a differentiable function, it can be shown, there is such a result, that when f prime x is negative for all x in m in this particular case, if this is true, then it follows that f is a monotone decreasing function on the closed interval m to infinity. So we will be using this fact, and so suppose you are given such a function. So why are you bothering about such a function? Suppose that you have a series, terms of which are associated with this function. That is, suppose you consider the series summation k equal to m to infinity fk. Then you can say that this series converges if and only if the integral m to infinity ft dt exists. So I have used the term exists, but generally we say that an improper, this is called an improper integral. So this converges. So since there are too many convergence involved at the same time, I have just used the term exists here. So what does this mean? Let me just make it clear. You know how to do a definite integral, right? So suppose I take any positive integer q and look at that positive integer, you suppose that is greater than m. M is your given positive integer here. So look at integral m to q ft dt. So this you can calculate, and this will give you a number, real number, which will be dependent on q. We don't go into the theory of this. You have done some integration, you have some working knowledge of integration. And for the time being, believe me that whenever you will have such a function, you will be able to do such an integration. So suppose you have calculated integral m to q ft dt for every positive integer q greater than m. Then what you are getting is a sequence of real numbers, right? Starting from q equal to m plus 1. Right? I'm just saying that q is a positive integer. So look at this definite integral. It will give some value as some real number. That much will always happen. And therefore, what you will get is a sequence of uh, real numbers starting from q equal to m plus 1 onwards. Okay. So now, what can you say about this sequence? Since your f is a positive function, and the integration is from m to q where q is greater than m. So therefore, if you increase q, the value of this integral will increase. At least you can intuitively agree to it because your integrand here is positive, right? So roughly you have heard these type of things that integral is the area under the curve and things like that. So and in fact during your numerical analysis course also you will encounter such a thing. So believe me for the time being that what will happen is that since your integrand is a positive function, as you increase your q, this value of the integral will increase. Sorry. So therefore, what you're getting is a monotone increasing sequence of real numbers here. So for a monotone increasing sequence, you know that two things are possible. If it is bounded above, then it is convergent, and if it is unbounded above, then it diverges to infinity. So when you write down limit q tending to infinity integral m to q ft dt, two possibilities are there. Either this will be a finite real number, in which case we will say that this improper integral. So I have put a colon here, meaning that the definition of this is precisely this. We will change it a little bit when we do improper integrals later on, but that change is very superficial. It will not matter at all. So right now, we can as well take this, and there is nothing wrong with this, and we take this as the definition of integral m to infinity ft dt. Here the range is infinite, right? So if this limit exists finitely, that means that this integral is convergent, to use the proper terminology, and the integral test is telling you that the convergence of this improper integral is a necessary and sufficient condition for this series to converge. And the other possibility, when this sequence actually diverges to infinity, we say that this improper integral diverges to infinity. And in that case, integral test is telling you that that again is a necessary and sufficient condition to for this particular series to diverge to infinity. So only two possibilities are here. Either the series will, again, the reason is easy to see, right? Because we had discussed this in the last lecture on series, that if you have a series of non-negative terms, which you will have here, because fk are all greater than 0, then this series is either going to be convergent or it is going to diverge to infinity. Your integral test is telling you that the series is convergent if and only if this limit is finite, and this series is going to diverge to infinity if and only if the limit is diverging, that is this sequence is actually diverging to infinity. Okay, and the only other thing which we need to know is that for a monotone decreasing function, you have this requirement. This requirement is can be checked algebraically, and in the particular case where f is a differentiable function, that is, if its derivative exists, then there is a theorem which says that if f prime x is negative in the domain, concerned domain, then f is monotone decreasing in the domain, right? So this thing is completely determined by the derivative of the function. If the derivative exists. Okay, so whatever examples we look at, there the choice of our function will be such that its derivative will exist, so we will not have problems. But in general, if you don't have such a thing, then you have to check this algebraically. Okay, and you realize that even though I started my integral test by saying that suppose f is a monotone decreasing function of this type, my interest is actually on the series. So I want to determine whether this particular series converges or diverges. Here there will be some expression. So using that expression, we will try to write down a function, suitable function, so that we can apply integral test on that. That is going to be our modus operandi. So let us just start looking at some examples. The first one is a very important series. Uh, it is called the P series. And the reason is that P plays an important role in the expression of the series. So look at the series summation n equal to 1 to infinity 1 by n to the power p. So p can be any real number. So for the time being, we are going to assume that p is greater than equal to 0. And we will prove that if p is in the closed interval 0 to 1, then this series will diverge. And if p is greater than 1, then this series will converge. That is what we are going to prove. And what happens when p is less than 0, we will discuss after some time. Okay. So first of all, for p equal to 0, we don't need any fancy results. If p is 0, then n to the power 0 is 1. So every term is 1 here. So therefore, the nth partial sum of the series is just n. Right? You are just adding 1 n many times. So you are going to get n. So therefore, that series is clearly divergent to infinity. Therefore, the case when p is equal to 0 is a trivial case, and that just follows. We don't need the integral test here. But when we look at p greater than 0, then we do wish to use integral test. So what we have to do is, looking at the series, we have to determine as to what our function should be. So the terms of the series start from n equal to 1. So the function should, we should make a choice of the function whose domain is close interval 1 to infinity, right? That was the first thing which I needed, that my domain should be suitably m here, so that when I am looking at the series is starting from fm onwards, right? So here I want it from n equal to 1 onwards, my p is fixed. So therefore, I take the function from close interval 1 infinity to the set of positive real numbers. And what will be my function? It will be completely determined by the series. So the series was 1 by n to the power p. So I choose my function to be fx equal to 1 by x to the power p. So that when you write down fn, then that just becomes equal to 1 by n to the power p, right? That is what you wish to have. Okay. Let us see. So the first condition which we want on the function is that it should be monotone decreasing. If we can ensure that, then we can at least proceed with our integral test. So how will we check whether this function is monotone decreasing or not? Since this is a differentiable function, we take its derivative. So what is the derivative of x to the power minus p? It is just minus p x to the power minus p minus 1. So you can write it as minus p divided by x to the power p plus 1. Now what is x? X you take to be greater than 1. Okay, so if x is greater than 1, then x to the power p plus 1 is obviously a positive number. For p, a positive number, right? So since p is positive, p plus 1 is positive, x is positive. So x is actually greater than 1. So x to the power p plus 1 is a positive number. The numerator is also positive. So what is the sign of the derivative of f? It is going to be negative because there is a minus sitting here. So therefore, the derivative is always negative in the domain open interval 1 to infinity, because there is a question of differentiability at the point 1. Actually, I did not have bothered, but since we have not discussed differentiability in great detail right now, so I just took the open interval 1 to infinity, because you know how to differentiate there. But at the point 1, what you have to do is you have to look at the right different derivative. So let us not bother about those things for the time being. So what you have seen is that the derivative is less than 0 for this given function, and therefore f is a monotone decreasing function. Okay, so at least the first hurdle you have crossed. So now what you have to do is you have to look at this integral and determine whether it is convergent or not. That is, whether its value is finite or not. Depending on that, the series will converge. So, since you know that if you integrate 1 over x to the power p over any range, then the value of this integral is going to be completely different when p is not equal to 1, and it is going to be different when p is equal to 1. So we will do the two cases separately. First, you assume that p equal to 1. Then if you want to find out what is integral 1 to infinity 1 by x dx, then by definition, it is equal to limit q tending to infinity integral 1 to q 1 by x dx. Here q is any positive integer greater than 1, right? So what is the integration of 1 by x dx? That is just log x. So you get limit q tending to infinity, you just, because you have a limit here, and log x, and this bar 1 to q means this is actually log q minus log 1. That is the value of integral 1 to q 1 by x dx. That is equal to log q minus log 1, right? And you have to compute the limit of that as q tends to infinity. But log 1 is 0, so you only get log q. And I showed you in a previous lecture the graph of log, right? So log is function which is going towards infinity. It keeps on increasing as your value of the variable keeps on increasing. So limit q tending to infinity, log q is going to be infinity. So what has happened is that this particular integral does not exist finitely. Therefore, by the integral test, the corresponding series summation n equal to 1 to infinity 1 by n, it will be divergent. In fact, it is properly divergent to infinity, right? So this is the first part which we have proved. In fact, if you like the second part, for p equal to 0, you have already seen, and now you've seen also for p equal to 1, that in both the cases, the series is going to diverge to infinity. The series summation 1 by n equal to 1 to infinity, is called the harmonic series. The word harmonic comes from music actually. It is the vibrations of the string which determine these numbers 1 by n. But even if we are not musically inclined, we can see it from a purely mathematical viewpoint, that if you look at 1 by n, the nth term in the sequence which corresponds to this sequence, then that is actually equal to the harmonic mean of the term preceding 1 by n and the term succeeding 1 by n. If you look at those two terms and find out the harmonic mean of that, that will give you the term 1 by n. So naturally, you want a term which is preceding 1 by n as well as a term which is succeeding it. Succession will not cause a problem, but if you want precision, that is a term which is preceding it, then you have to start with the second one, right? So suppose you consider 1 by n, where n is greater than equal to 2, then it is not a difficult thing to see that this is actually equal to 2 divided by n minus 1 plus n plus 1, right? Minus 1 and plus 1 cancels out, so you do get 1 by n. And n minus 1 you can write as 1 by n minus 1 inverse. Now it makes sense because n is greater than equal to 2. And n plus 1 you can write as 1 by n plus 1 inverse. So what you are actually getting is the harmonic mean of the numbers 1 by n minus 1 and 1 by n plus 1. And the harmonic mean of these two numbers is exactly 1 by n. So this is an interesting fact. It doesn't reflect on what on the problem which we are doing, but it is nice to know. Okay, so for p equal to 1 we have done. Now let us look at what happens when p is not equal to 1. So again we have to look at the improper integral 1 to infinity 1 by x to the power p dx. So by definition it is equal to limit q tending to infinity integral 1 to q 1 by x to the power p dx. Now what is this integral? This integral is if you just look at the indefinite integral, it is x to the power 1 minus p divided by 1 minus p, right? It is x to the power minus p, so minus p plus 1. So you get this divided by minus p plus 1. and you have to find out the value for the definite integral. You have to find the value of this at q and subtract from that the value at 1. So what do you get? You get q to the power 1 minus p minus 1 divided by 1 minus p. So that is the value of integral 1 to q 1 by x to the power p dx. And if you find out what is the limit as q tends to infinity of this, that will give you the value of integral 1 to infinity 1 by x to the power p dx if possible, if there is a finite value. So let us see what is happening here. Here your q is some number greater than 1, and if you let your p, there are two cases actually. So if you let your p to be less than 1, then the denominator here is becoming positive, right? It is in any case not dependent on q, but it is a scalar which is a positive scalar. And what is happening to the numerator? In the numerator, as q tends to infinity, q to the power a positive number will also tend to infinity. 1 minus p is positive. So as q is tending to infinity, q to the power 1 minus p is also tending to infinity, right? Look at this. Because it is completely dependent on the nature of log and the exponential. As q is going to infinity, log q is tending to infinity, and we are multiplying by just a positive scalar, and then looking at the exponential of that, exponential is also an increasing function. So as q goes to infinity, e to the power something dependent on q in this manner will also go to infinity. So what do you get? That when p is less than 1, then this improper integral does not exist finitely. Yes? And when p is greater than 1, then what happens? Then your 1 minus p is actually a negative number. So it becomes 1 by q to the power p minus 1. And p minus 1 is the positive one, right? So q to the power p minus 1 is tending to infinity as q tends to infinity. So its reciprocal will go to 0, right? So what do you get? You get, this is not nice. This one will go to 0. So it will go to minus 1 divided by 1 minus p if p is greater than 1. This is not correct. This one is going to 0. So if you take your limit as q tending to infinity, you're left out with 1 divided by p minus 1. Okay, so that is a finite number. So when p is greater than 1, then this improper integral takes a finite value, which is exactly equal to 1 by p minus 1. And when p is less than 1, then it diverges to infinity. Therefore, please ignore this. This I have written wrong. It should be 1 by p minus 1. And therefore, by integral test, you get that this p series diverges if p is less than 1 and converges if p is greater than 1. So, for the range of values of p which we had fixed, we get that the p series diverges if 0 less than or equal to p less than or equal to 1 and converges if p is greater than 1. This is what we have proved. Okay, so let us look at one more example which will be useful for us. That suppose again you take a p greater than equal to 0 and you want to look at which series. Let me first tell you. You want to look at the series summation n equal to 2 to infinity 1 by n log n to the power p. So since there is a log n in the denominator, you start the series from n equal to 2 because log 1 is 0. So therefore, our series is summation n equal to 2 to infinity 1 by n log n to the power p. So we want to determine the behavior of this series. So for that, what we do is we write down a function from close interval 2 to infinity now. And the definition of the function is fx is equal to 1 by x log x to the power p. So this is completely determined by the series which we want to discuss. Okay, for all x greater than equal to 2. So again, the first step is we want to determine whether the function is monotone decreasing or not. And here again the function is differentiable, so we just compute the derivative of f. So what is the derivative of f? It is just, there are two terms. So I have just differentiated here 1 by x. So I will get minus 1 by x squared log x to the power p in the denominator as it was. And then I have differentiated 1 by log x whole to the power p. So that I will get as minus p log x to the power minus p minus 1. So it becomes 1 by log x to the power p plus 1. And then you have to differentiate log x. So you will get a 1 by x there. And you already had a 1 by x here. So the totality will be that it will be minus p divided by x squared log x to the power p plus 1. So notice all the terms, if you ignore these two signs, are positive here, right? X squared is positive, log x to the power p is positive, because now x is greater than or equal to 2, so log x is greater than 0 at least. So you have a positive number and you are taking the exponent also to be a positive number. P is greater, or rather non-negative number, p is greater than or equal to 0. So what do you get? You get minus 1 by this whole number thing derivative is going to be negative, and hence f is a monotone decreasing function. Again, the value of the integral in which we are concerned will be different for p equal to 1 and for p not equal to 1. So what we have done is that we do the p equal to 1 case separately and p not equal to 1 case separately. So if p is equal to 1, then integral 2 to infinity 1 by x log x dx is equal to what? This is, you have to take the limit as q tends to infinity, integral 2 to q 1 by x log x dx. But notice, what is 1 by x log x? That is d of log of log x, right? If you take the derivative of log x, you will get 1 by x log x, exactly this. So the integral is going to be, the indefinite integral is just log of log x, and the definite integral will be log of log q minus log of log 2, right? And then you have to take the limit as q tends to infinity to determine the value of this particular improper integral. So if you take q tends to infinity, then log q is tending to infinity, and therefore log of log q is tending to infinity, right? And this is just a positive, and this is just a scalar. So the total effect would be that this is going to infinity. Hence, your integral test is telling you that for p equal to 1 at least, the series summation n equal to 2 to infinity 1 by n log n is divergent to infinity, right? What happens when p is not equal to 1? See, I did not bother to do the p equal to 0 case separately here. Actually, if you had put p equal to 0, then you would get the series summation 1 by n. So that is the harmonic series which diverges to infinity. So instead, I have just included everything together in the second part. So again, we have to do some integration. But now we have to integrate 1 by x log x to the power p, and where p is not equal to 1. And I am assuming that p is greater than equal to 0. I think I have said that, yes. When p is greater than equal to 0. When p is less than 0, that we will discuss in a different manner after some time. Okay, so let me see whether, I hope I have done this one correctly or not. So let us see. What is the definite integral 2 to q 1 by x log x to the power p? So again, 1 by x is the derivative of log x, right? So you can just write this as log x to the power minus p plus 1 divided by minus p plus 1, right? If you take the derivative of this, then what will you get? This 1 minus p comes in the front. So you get 1 minus p log x to the power 1 minus p minus 1. So you are left with log x to the power minus p. So that is this part. And 1 minus p cancels out. And then you have to take the derivative of log x. So you get 1 by x. So essentially you are going to get this, right? This also I have not written correctly. But I don't know what was playing in my mind. I just saw that this one will be 0. So I forgot about this one. So we should not do that. We should be careful. So in any case, so what is your definite integral? It is going to be log q to the power 1 minus p divided by 1 minus p. minus log 2 to the power 1 minus p divided by 1 minus p, right? So this is the value of the definite integral from 2 to q of the given function. Then you take limit q tending to infinity. So that is not going to affect this part at all. What is happening here is, again you see the same type of thing. If p is between 0 and 1 inclusive of 0, then this one goes to infinity. So since this goes to infinity, as q tends to infinity, this one is going to infinity, because 1 minus p is again a positive quantity. So therefore, infinity minus, and this is just a fixed real number. So therefore, the total integral, the total limit is actually diverging to infinity. So therefore, when when p is between 0 and 1 inclusive of 0, then it diverges to infinity. What happens when p is greater than 1? When p is greater than 1, then this first term tends to 0, right? But this term remains. That is what I have made a mistake in the first example also and here also. So what will remain is a finite number, minus log 2 to the power 1 minus p divided by 1 minus p. This will remain. But since that is a finite number, so you do get that the limit exists finitely for p greater than 1. Therefore, this integral is actually converging, this improper integral, for p greater than 1. Therefore, you can deduce from the integral test that summation n equal to 2 to infinity 1 by n log n to the power p diverges if 0 less than or equal to p less than 1, and converges if p is greater than 1. From here and from the previous one, you had also concluded that for p equal to 1 also, this series diverges, right? And diverges to infinity, of course. Okay, so now we do a very small result which tells you, gives you a necessary condition that if summation k equal to 1 to infinity ak converges, then limit n tending to infinity an has to be equal to 0. So this is a very small result, but it is very useful. So let us see how to prove it. Suppose that summation k equal to 1 to infinity ak converges. Then by Cauchy's criterion, what do you get? That for any epsilon greater than 0, you will be able to get a positive integer n, such that for all little m greater than equal to n greater than equal to capital N, modulus of summation k equal to n to m ak is less than epsilon. Right? This was your Cauchy's criterion for convergence. Since you are given that the series converges, this Cauchy's criterion will hold. Now here in particular, if you put n equal to m, then what will happen? This summation will be actually only one term, am. So you get that for any epsilon greater than 0, there exists a capital N positive integer, so that for all m greater than equal to capital N, mod am is less than epsilon. But that means what? That limit n tending to infinity, an is equal to 0. So if you have a convergence series, then if you look at its corresponding sequence, not the sequence of partial sums, mind. If you look at the corresponding sequence, then that is going to be a null sequence. Okay, so the first thing which we note is that the converse is not true. For example, if you look at the series summation n equal to 1 to infinity 1 by n, then we have seen just now when we were discussing p series that this diverges to infinity. But clearly limit n tending to infinity 1 by n is 0. So this being equal to 0 doesn't imply convergence of the series. But if the series converges, then this limit will be 0. Right? So we can use it in a different fashion. How? That suppose your p is less than 0. Then if you look at limit n tending to infinity 1 by n to the power p. Now since p is less than 0, this is actually diverging to infinity, right? As you take your n larger and larger, 1 by n to the power p will become larger and larger because p is less than 0. right? So P is equal to say some minus K. So if P is equal to minus K, where K is positive, then this sequence is actually equal to 1 by n to the power minus K. So that means it is actually a sequence n to the power K, where K is a positive quantity. So as n tends to infinity, n to the power K is also going to tend to infinity. That is, it is going to diverge to infinity. So at least it is not, this limit is not equal to 0. It is not a null sequence for P less than 0. So what does that imply? That if P is less than 0, then the series summation n equal to 1 to infinity 1 by n to the power P, that cannot be convergent. Because if it were convergent, then this limit had to be 0. But since we see this that this limit is non-zero, therefore this series is not convergent. But now this is a series of non-negative terms. In fact, this is a series of positive terms. So therefore, since it is not convergent, it actually diverges to infinity. So for the P series, you saw in details using integral test that it was divergent when 0 less than or equal to P less than or equal to 1, and convergent when P was greater than 1. And in fact, you now see that for the same type of series, it is also divergent to infinity when P is less than 0. So the series summation n equal to 1 to infinity 1 by n to the power P converges only if P is greater than 1. So we will keep this in mind. And let us look at another example. Suppose you consider the series summation n equal to 1 to infinity an, where an is equal to minus 1 to the power n minus 1 multiplied by n to the power n by n factorial. So if you look at mod of an, what is it going to look like? This sign will become positive. So it is just n to the power n by n factorial. But n to the power n is always greater than equal to n factorial, right? N to the power n means n into n into n times, and n factorial means 1 into 2 into 3, etc. till n. So if you replace every 2, 3, 4, etc. by the largest number n, naturally the product will increase. So n to the power n is greater than equal to n factorial. Why have we written greater than equal to here? Because when n is equal to 1, they are the same, right? Afterwards, it will become strictly greater. So whatever mod an is always greater than equal to 1. So if you look at the way an is dispersed on the real line, it is going to be either less than or equal to minus 1 or greater than equal to 1, right? Dependent on whether n is a even number or an odd number. It is either going to be less than minus 1 or greater than minus 1, except for a first term. So what will happen is that it will never converge to 0. Whether it converges or not, we don't bother. At least it will not converge to 0. So since this limit n tending to infinity an is not going to converge to 0, so therefore this series cannot converge, and hence it is a divergent series. But in this particular case, you cannot say that it is diverging to infinity or anything. Actually, it is going to be an oscillating series, because you have um, minus 1 to the power n minus 1 here. So it takes, the terms take random positive and negative values. So the partial sums could be anything. Let us not bother about those things. We cannot say it is properly divergent to infinity. And from this observation, from the previous small result which we proved, we say that the series is not convergent. Okay. Next result is the Abel-Pringsheim's theorem, which says that if you have a monotonically decreasing sequence of non-negative real numbers, two things required, right? So one is that it is monotonically decreasing, and the other is that an is greater than equal to 0 for all n. Then again you can make some statement dependent on the convergence of the series. That is, you can make a necessary condition on the convergence of series. If summation n equal to 1 to infinity an converges, then limit n tending to infinity n an will be equal to 0. So let us prove this. Suppose I take epsilon greater than 0. Then again, by Cauchy's criterion, there is a positive integer capital N, so that summation little k equal to n plus 1 to m. See, notice here I am not writing the little n here anymore. Instead of little n, I am using capital N plus 1. That is perfectly all right. So summation k equal to n plus 1 to m, ak, that will be less than epsilon by 2. By Cauchy's criterion, and why is there no modulus sign here? Because now your AKs are all greater than equal to 0, right? They are non-negative real numbers. So you have this. Again, AN is a monotone decreasing sequence. So if M is greater than equal to K, then AM is less than or equal to K. This all AM is less than or equal to AK, right? This also we have. So let us see what is happening. So let's go back here and see. So you have this a n plus 1 plus a capital N plus 1 plus a capital N plus 2 plus etc. plus am, that is less than epsilon by 2. So it is going till the mth term, right? Am, starting from the n plus 1th term. Now what is happening, that if you replace each of these AKs by AM, then the number will decrease, right? Because K ranging from capital N plus 1 to M are all numbers which are less than or equal to M. So each of these AKs is going to be greater than equal to AM. So if you replace each of these AKs by AM and then add, the number you get is going to be less than this number. But how many terms will you get? You are starting from capital N plus 1th term and ending at little m. So you write down little m as capital N plus little m minus capital N. You can write that. So how many terms are there? There are one starting from 1, 2, etc. till little m minus capital N terms. So what you are saying is that use this inequality in this particular expression, you get little m minus capital N times am is less than epsilon by 2, because it has decreased further and there were exactly m minus capital N terms here, right? There are m minus capital N terms here. So you do get such a inequality for all little m greater than equal to capital N. Next, use your previous theorem. What did result? You had shown that if the series is convergent, then limit n tending to infinity an is equal to 0, right? So using that, what do you get? That for this same epsilon, you will be able to get a positive integer m, so that for all little m greater than equal to capital N, am will be less than your pre-assigned positive number. So here you take epsilon divided by 2n. This is done by some back calculation so that everything cancels out neatly at the end. That is all. So since epsilon is a positive number, so epsilon divided by 2n is also a positive number. And you do get a term capital M, so that after the capital mth term, am will become less than epsilon by 2 into capital N, because limit n tending to infinity an is equal to 0. Now you do get such an m, and you already had a capital N previously, so you could rearrange you can just make a choice properly, so that you take the maximum of whatever you are getting here and this capital N, and so that this inequality and this inequality holds at the same time. So how will you do that? One way was just by taking the maximum and so on. Here what I have done is I have just chosen this capital M, after which certain things should happen, to be greater than the positive integer capital N, right? Since it will happen for at least one positive integer, it will happen for every positive integers after that, right? So I will make a choice so that my capital M, which I will find, for which this inequality will hold, after the capital M term, this term I will choose after greater than n, so that this inequality and this inequality both will hold for all little m greater than equal to capital M. Okay. And what is this inequality? This is just capital N times little am is less than epsilon by 2. That is just obvious, right? So then if you take your little m to be greater than equal to capital M, what do you get from here? You get MAM is equal to m minus capital N AM plus n capital AM. No problems with that. Now m minus capital N times AM, that is less than epsilon by 2, because since m is capital M is greater than capital N, this will happen, and this is less than epsilon by 2, and capital N times AM is also less than epsilon by 2. So what do you get? You get MAM is less than epsilon for all m greater than equal to capital M. So after doing some subtle work, what you have seen is that given any epsilon greater than 0, it is possible to get a positive integer capital M, so that whenever little m is greater than equal to capital N, then MAM is less than epsilon. Now MAM is the same as mod of MAM because AM are non-negative numbers. So what you have proved is that this sequence is a null sequence, limit n tending to infinity, NAN is equal to 0. So that is your Abel-Pringsheim's theorem, that if a series converges, then limit n tending to infinity NAN is equal to 0, provided AN has the property that it forms a monotonically decreasing sequence of non-negative real numbers. Okay. So again, this is a necessary condition. It is not sufficient. So to see that, you look at the series summation n equal to 2 to infinity 1 by n log n. So we have seen that this series diverges to infinity. But if you look at n times its nth term, so that becomes n into 1 by n log n. What do you get? N cancels out and you're left with 1 by log n. So if you take the limit as n tends to infinity, then you do get a 0. So what do you get? You get that Abel-Pringsheim's theorem is only giving you a necessary condition. It is not giving you a sufficient condition. And here everything else is okay, right? So 1 by n log n, they are all greater than 0, and they do form a monotonically decreasing sequence. So that is perfectly all right. Okay, and let us look at one more thing, which is basically I'm going to talk about this series again, summation n equal to 2 to infinity 1 by n log n to the power p, but now I'm assuming that my p is less than 0. That is the case which we have not discussed. So for that, I will show that it will still diverge to infinity. So why should that happen? So for that, we look at this function first of all. Okay. Because to apply Abel-Pringsheim's theorem, we do need a series of whose terms form a monotonically decreasing sequence of non-negative real numbers. So therefore, I want to ensure that this is monotonically decreasing, right? So I could have just done some hand waving and said that this is actually, if p is less than 0, then log n to the power p is actually, suppose p is minus k, then this is actually log n to the power minus k. So that means log n to the power k, and this is divided by n. So this will be decreasing because log n decreases slower, log n increases slower than a polynomial function, but I don't want to do all sorts of hand waving at this stage. So instead of that, we actually do the computation. Okay. So I said that what will happen here is this will become log n to the power k divided by n, right? Where k is a positive number. So what I have done is I have just taken a positive number, positive integer, and look at the function log x to the power q divided by x. And so you, for all x greater than equal to 2, for the obvious reason that I want log x to be positive, right? And finally I want, okay, that's all. So if you look at this function, then compute its derivative. That is not a big deal now. So what will you get? You will get first, you will get q times log x to the power q minus 1 into 1 by x. So that will give you q times log x to the power q minus 1 by x squared, because there was a 1 by x here. And then you will get minus log x by x squared if you differentiate 1 by x. So finally you will get f prime x is equal to this. So it is not true that this is going to be always negative, right? X square is always positive, no problems. Log x to the power q minus 1, that is also always positive, right? Because q is a positive integer. So if q is 1, then this just becomes 1. Otherwise, it is a greater than 0 number. So the only question is, what about q minus log x? So this is going to be negative only if log x is greater than q, right? So q minus log x should be less than 0, then the derivative will be less than 0. So we did not get a very neat thing where it was less than 0 throughout, but at least if log x is greater than q, then the function is monotone decreasing. Okay, so now we are looking at this particular sequence. This sequence, what can you say about it now? Since this function is monotone decreasing in this range, so therefore this sequence will be monotone decreasing sequence of positive numbers, not from the very beginning, but after a certain term, right? When the n is such that it goes beyond your x, so that log x is greater than q. So if n is such that log n is greater than q, that is when n is greater than e to the power q, after that term, this terms of this sequence will become a monotonically decreasing sequence. But that is sufficient, right? If you recall the proof of Abel-Pringsheim's theorem, all the requirements were about the limit of various things. So when you're talking about limits, the first few terms are not going to disturb your argument. So therefore, since this sequence is a monotone decreasing sequence after a certain term, that is sufficient for us. And if we look at limit n tending to infinity n times this, what will happen? That n will cancel out and you will be left out with 1 by log n to the power p. And that clearly is not going to be 0 because p is now less than 0. So if p is less than 0, then suppose p is equal to again minus k, then this actually becomes limit n tending to infinity log n to the power k. So as n tends to infinity, log n tends to infinity, and log n to the power any positive number will also tend to infinity. So at least it is not going to be 0. So what does that tell you? That tells you that this series summation n equal to 2 to infinity 1 by n log n to the power p is going to diverge to infinity because it cannot be convergent. If it is convergent by Abel-Pringsheim's theorem, this limit should have been 0. But this is not 0, therefore this series is not convergent. And since this is a series of positive terms, so not convergent means it diverges to infinity. So I hope I have made myself clear here, apart from making some silly mistakes in the beginning, and which I hope you have understood where the mistake was. In the next lecture, we will talk about comparison test and root and ratio test also, if possible. So let us stop here.